15. Chosen One. This cult is panicking. Trying to figure out how you found out. The truth does not knock politely. It does not tap lightly on the glass, excuse itself for interrupting, or ask for permission to enter the room. Sometimes the truth kicks the door completely off the hinges, shatters the windows, and demands that everyone in the room stand in the cold air and look at the debris of their own lies. Most people do not hate intelligence, intuition, or spiritual alignment. They hate what your intelligence makes them feel about their own manufactured ignorance. They hate the way your quiet presence forces them to look at the ugly, unhealed parts of themselves they have spent decades trying to bury under cheap performances and loud ego trips. Welcome back, chosen ones. If you are listening to this right now, you are likely in the middle of a profound, confusing, and heavy energetic shift. You have recently withdrawn your energy, your compliance, and your blind loyalty from a group of people, a family system, a toxic workplace, or a clique of insecure individuals. You stepped back. You stopped playing the game. And now, you are feeling a strange, frantic, chaotic energy directed toward you. This invisible cult of conformity is panicking. They are holding emergency meetings in the shadows. They are texting each other frantically, comparing notes and trying to patch the holes in their sinking ship. They are utterly consumed with one terrifying question. They are trying to figure out how exactly you found out. You did not even have to say a word. You did not announce your departure. You did not write a dramatic thesis about their toxic behavior, and you did not wage a war. You simply observed, realized the truth, and spiritually disconnected. This terrified them more than screaming ever could. They built an entire ecosystem relying on your blindness, and the moment you opened your eyes, their foundation cracked. Their panic is palpable, their movements are erratic, and their masks are slipping. Let us get into it. Let us break down exactly why these people are exposing themselves, trying to compete with you, and why they are experiencing a total psychological meltdown over your quiet, undeniable success and spiritual withdrawal. Let us begin. Before we dive into the deep psychological architecture of their panic, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment with what point hit you hardest, and share the video with someone who needs the reminder. Number 1. They never expected you to decode the silence and survive long enough to see their true faces. You have to understand the fundamental difference between how you operate and how they operate. Your internal architecture is built on authentic, hard-earned spiritual alignment. You are grounded in a truth that does not require external validation. Their entire existence, however, is a borrowed, insecure, performative facade that desperately relies on the applause and compliance of the people around them. They rely on unspoken agreements, passive-aggressive manipulation, and the assumption that you will never connect the dots. When you finally decoded their silence, when you read the energy beneath their fake smiles and backhanded compliments, you broke the core mechanism of their control. The deep psychology here is rooted in the fear of being perceived accurately. Toxic and highly performative people curate their image obsessively. They need you to view them through the distorted lens they have provided. When you stop looking through their lens and start using your own spiritual discernment, they experience a violent loss of control. Their ego, which is incredibly fragile and dependent on your naivety, shatters. They realize that their usual tricks, gaslighting, shifting blame, and playing the victim, no longer work because you are no longer speaking their language. You are reading the energetic subtitles of their actions, not listening to the audio of their lies. Watching their behavior right now is like watching someone stacking flimsy cards on a violently windy table while you are quietly stacking heavy bricks on solid ground. They are frantically trying to shield their house of cards from the wind of your intuition, running around in a panic, trying to keep the structure standing. From the outside, this dynamic looks incredibly goofy and tragic. They are whispering about you, trying to figure out who leaked the information, completely oblivious to the fact that no human being had to tell you anything. Your spirit simply woke up. You survived the initial stages of their manipulation. You endured the isolation, and you stayed alive long enough for the illusion to wear off. They never planned for your endurance. They thought they could drain you and discard you before you ever saw the man behind the curtain. Number 2. Your sudden absence completely destroyed their fragile emotional ecosystem. The contrast between your self-sustained energy and their parasitic dynamic cannot be overstated. You are a generator. You source your peace, your drive, and your validation from within and from the Most High. They are batteries that cannot hold a charge. They must constantly plug into someone else's drama, reaction, or suffering to feel alive. In their clique, their family system, or their workplace cabal, every person has a designated role. You are likely assigned the role of the peacekeeper, the emotional sponge, the scapegoat, or the battery pack. You were the one they projected their insecurities onto, the one they used to regulate their own chaotic nervous systems. When you quietly packed up your energy and left the ecosystem, you did not just remove a person from the room. You removed the central regulatory mechanism of their entire group. The deep psychology of this panic lies in the terrifying reality of narcissistic supply. Without you there to absorb their toxicity, the toxicity has nowhere to go but inward. The members of this toxic cult are now forced to look at each other, and more horrifyingly, to look at themselves. Their fear of stagnation and their inability to self-soothe is causing a massive structural collapse. They are scrambling to find a replacement for you, but the specific high-vibrational energy you provided cannot be replicated by the low-level participants they usually attract. It is exactly like removing the main load-bearing pillar of a rotting, termite-infested house. For years, they painted the walls, hung nice pictures, and pretended the house was a mansion, entirely ignoring the fact that your grace was the only thing keeping the roof from caving in. Now that you have stepped away, the house is groaning, the drywall is cracking, and the roof is sagging. They are frantically running around with duct tape, blaming the wind, blaming the rain, blaming you for leaving, doing absolutely everything except acknowledging that their house was built on rot. You do not need to lift a finger to destroy them. Your absence is doing all the heavy lifting. You are watching a tragic, frantic display of people who do not know how to exist without a host. Number 3. They are rapidly realizing that their desperate smear campaign has backfired violently. You stand in an authentic, hard-earned reputation that speaks for itself. Your character has been tested in the fire. Your alignment is genuine, and your actions match your words. In stark contrast, their reputation is held together by frantic gossip, whisper networks, and proactive character assassination. When they realized you were waking up and stepping out of their control, their immediate, deeply insecure response was to try and control the narrative. They ran to everyone who would listen, spinning tales, exaggerating conflicts, and painting you as the villain. They assumed you would fight back. They assumed you would sink into the mud with them and defend yourself. thereby giving them the chaotic engagement they crave. Psychologically, a smear campaign is an act of extreme projection and profound panic. It is a preemptive strike, born from the terrifying realization that they have lost their grip on you. They accuse you of exactly what they are guilty of doing, hoping to muddy the waters so much that nobody can tell who the real perpetrator is. But their fragile egos did not account for your terrifying, unbothered silence. When you refuse to defend yourself against obvious lies, you starve them of their script. Their reliance on a predictable back-and-forth drama falls flat. They are essentially shouting into a void, and the longer they shout, the more unhinged they look to any rational observer. This behavior is the metaphorical equivalent of a person trying to throw wet, heavy mud into hurricane-force headwinds. They are scooping up the dirt, hurling it with all their might toward you, only for the wind of your undeniable truth to blow the mud directly back into their own faces. The more they throw, the dirtier they get. From a spiritual and psychological distance, it is fascinatingly tragic. People who truly matter, the ones with actual discernment, are watching this group melt down over your success and your peace. They see the frantic, sweat-drenched effort of the imitators, and they see the calm, unshakable resilience of your silence. The smear campaign has only served to highlight their obsession with you, proving to the world exactly who the toxic variable always was. Number 4. You force them to confront the profound intelligence they arrogantly abandoned and underestimated. You are an observer. You process information internally, you analyze patterns, and you wait until the full picture is clear before you make a move. This quiet wisdom is deeply confusing to people whose entire personality is an external performance. They are loud, arrogant, and superficially confident. They mistook your quietness for slowness. They mistook your willingness to listen for an inability to understand. Because their intelligence is performative, designed only to win arguments, dominate conversations, and look smart in front of an audience. They could not comprehend a mind that operates in stealth, gathering data without feeling the need to boast about it. The psychological meltdown they are experiencing right now is directly tied to the Dunning-Kruger effect, interacting with a shattered ego. They genuinely believed they were outsmarting you. They thought they were running laps around you, manipulating you from the shadows and playing you like a fiddle. When you finally set your boundaries and revealed that you had been quietly cataloging their behavior the entire time, it delivered a lethal blow to their superiority complex. They are not just angry that you left. They are deeply humiliated that you outmaneuvered them while barely moving a muscle. Their panic is rooted in the shame of realizing they played their best hand against someone who wasn't even sitting at the card table, but was instead watching the game from the ceiling. It is like the court jester laughing uncontrollably at the silent king, believing the king's silence means he is weak, oblivious to the fact that the king has already quietly signed the jester's banishment papers. They are acting like someone wearing cheap fake jewelry they cannot afford, strutting around the room, demanding to be treated like royalty. But when you look at them, you do not see the sparkle. You see the green stain the fake metal is leaving on their skin. They know you see the stain. They know you see the cheapness of their tactics. You force them to realize that their perceived brilliance was nothing more than loud ignorance. And there is nothing a narcissist or a toxic clique hates more than feeling fundamentally, intellectually outclassed by someone they tried to belittle. Number 5. Their performative masks are suffocating them, and your authenticity makes the heat unbearable. Let us contrast the way you walk through the world with the way they are forced to exist. Your internal alignment allows you to breathe. When you make a mistake, you own it. When you are healing, you honor the pain. You are walking through life in your own skin, which requires zero active maintenance, because it is simply who you are. Their existence, conversely, is an exhaustive, heavily scripted theatrical production. They are wearing masks built out of borrowed personality traits, insecure projections, and externally validated lies. They have to wake up every single morning and re-glue the mask to their face, constantly scanning the room to make sure nobody can see the seams. The psychology of maintaining a false narrative is incredibly taxing on the human nervous system. It creates a state of chronic, low-grade fight or flight. They must constantly manage the script, remember the lies they told, and silence anyone who threatens the illusion. When you decided to drop out of their play and walk into your authentic truth, you became a walking threat to their psychological survival. They do not just resent you. They are envious of your oxygen. Your ability to exist without a mask makes them painfully aware of how heavily their own mask is suffocating them. They are panicking because your unapologetic realness is a spotlight shining directly on the cardboard props of their fake life. Imagine wearing a massive, heavy, stifling theater costume made of cheap velvet and plastic armor, standing in the scorching desert sun. That is what it feels like to be them. Now imagine you walking past them in light, breathable clothing, drinking a glass of cold water. They are raging at you, demanding to know why you aren't sweating, screaming that you are not playing your part correctly. It is a profoundly tragic display of misdirected anger. They want to tear you down, not because you did anything wrong to them, but because your sheer existence reminds them of the prison they built for themselves. They are melting down over your success, because every time you level up in your authentic truth, the temperature in their artificial theater goes up another 10 degrees. Number 6. They are absolutely terrified that you possess tangible receipts. Even though your only weapon was spiritual intuition, you operate on a frequency of deep knowing. You have done the shadow work. You have cleared your vessel, and you have allowed the Most High to guide your discernment. When something is hidden in the dark, you feel the absence of light long before you see the shadow. The people competing with you operate in a purely material, manipulative, and paranoid dimension, because they are constantly plotting, scheming, and hiding physical evidence of their betrayal, sneaky text messages, backroom conversations, hidden agendas. They literally cannot fathom the concept of spiritual discernment. The psychological terror they are experiencing is born from severe paranoia and a guilty conscience. A guilty mind needs no accuser. When you abruptly changed your behavior, withdrew your access, and erected a fortress of boundaries, their paranoid brains immediately assumed the worst. They think someone snitched. They think you hacked their phones. They think you overheard a conversation you were not supposed to hear. They are scrambling, interrogating their own allies, trying to figure out where the leak is. They cannot comprehend that there is no leak. There is only your heightened spiritual awareness. They are terrified because they are heavily reliant on a script of deception, and they think you stole the director's copy. This dynamic is exactly like a petty thief jumping out of their skin at every passing shadow, convinced that the wind rustling the leaves is actually the sound of a police siren. They are running frantically down an empty street, looking over their shoulder, sweating, panicking, trying to hide the stolen goods. Meanwhile, you are miles away, sitting quietly in your living room, drinking tea, not even thinking about them. They are spiritually haunting themselves. You do not need screenshots, you do not need hidden camera footage, and you do not need confessions. Your intuition handed you the full dossier of their character, and because they cannot intercept or manipulate a spiritual download, they are left pacing the floor, completely defenseless against the truth you hold. Number 7. They see your continuous painful evolution as a direct, personal insult to their chosen stagnation. Look at the contrast between your journey and theirs. You have chosen the terrifying path of growth. You have faced your traumas. You have broken generational curses. You have endured the brutal isolation of the cocoon phase. And you have sacrificed your comfort for your alignment. They have chosen the illusion of safety. They remain in comfortable decay, repeating the same toxic cycles, hanging out with the same unhealed people, and complaining about the same preventable problems year after year. They want the rewards of evolution without the agony of the transformation. The psychology of their resentment is rooted in the ego's defense mechanism against inadequacy. When a toxic person or a complacent group watches someone from their own ranks rise up, heal, and achieve genuine success, it shatters their favorite excuse. For years, they told themselves that greatness was impossible, that healing was a myth, and that everyone is just as miserable as they are. Your ascension proves that their misery is a choice. You hold up a relentless, unavoidable mirror to their wasted potential. They are not actually angry at your success. They are enraged by their own stagnation. They are trying to figure out how you found the secret door out of the basement because they want to lock it and trap you back down there with them. It is the classic, tragic metaphor of crabs in a bucket, but with a deeper psychological twist. They are not just pulling you down blindly. They are raging at you because by climbing to the rim of the bucket, you have proven to them that the sky actually exists. They have spent their entire lives convincing each other that the bucket is the whole universe. Your success is a breach of their collective delusion. They look frantic and goofy, trying to throw insults up at you from the bottom of the bucket while you are already walking on the beach. They are exposing themselves, trying to compete with a version of you that does not even exist anymore, fighting ghosts of your past while you continue to build your future. Number 8, their rigid, artificial hierarchy has completely collapsed because you simply stopped playing your assigned role. You exist as an autonomous, sovereign individual. You do not need to stand on someone else's neck to feel tall. You find your value in your spiritual alignment and your internal peace. In stark contrast, the clique or toxic system you left relies entirely on an artificial, externally validated pecking order. They need a designated lesser person to feel superior. They need a designated scapegoat to carry the blame for their collective dysfunction. They need you to be small, confused, and dependent so that they can feel large, intelligent, and powerful. The deep psychology of their panic is tied to a total vacuum of power. When you realized your worth and withdrew your participation, you did not just climb the ladder. You walked away from the ladder entirely and let it crash to the ground. You broke the fundamental agreement of their social structure because their egos are so fragile and so dependent on downward comparison. Your departure leaves them desperate and disoriented. Who do they mock now to feel secure? Who do they blame now when their own lives fall apart? The sudden absence of their favorite target forces the hierarchy to turn on itself. The mid-level bullies are now becoming the new scapegoats, and the leaders are terrified of losing their remaining followers. It is exactly like an actor who is forced to participate in a terrible, degrading play. For years, you read the terrible script they handed you, taking the verbal abuse disguised as stage directions. But one day, right in the middle of the second act, you simply dropped the script, walked off the stage, out the back door, and drove home. Now the remaining cast members are stranded under the hot, blinding stage lights, staring at each other in utter panic. They do not know their own lines because their entire performance revolved around reacting to you. They are sweating, improvising poorly, and the audience, the rest of the perceptive world, is laughing at how pathetic the show has become without you there to carry it. Number 9. They are completely exhausted by the metabolic cost of maintaining their own fabricated realities. You must appreciate the sheer effortlessness of living in truth. When you are aligned, authentic, and honest, your memory does not need to work overtime. You do not have to keep track of what you said to whom, because the truth is always the same. You are stacking solid bricks on a firm foundation. Their lives are entirely different. They are operating a massive, convoluted web of deceit, half-truths, triangulations, and spin. They have to remember which lie they told to which flying monkey, which mask they wore for which audience, and which version of the narrative is currently active. The psychological toll of cognitive dissonance and continuous deception is staggering. It literally drains the central nervous system. They are chronically exhausted, hypervigilant, and stretched thin. When you stepped out of the illusion, you introduced an undeniable, unshakable reality into their distortion field. Your mere existence as a grounded, truthful person threatens to collapse their entire fragile architecture. They are panicking because they know that truth is heavy and lies are light. They know that all it takes is one solid, undeniable fact from you to crush the thousands of delicate little lies they have been spinning for months or years. They are exposing themselves by over-explaining, over-posting on social media, and loudly declaring how happy they are, which is the ultimate sign of profound internal misery. It is like watching a frantic magician trying to keep 50 plates spinning on flimsy sticks at the exact same time, while a mild earthquake begins to roll through the room. You are the earthquake. You are not even doing anything aggressive. Your steady, grounded frequency naturally disrupts their unstable, high-anxiety frequency. They are running from plate to plate, sweating profusely, eyes wide with panic, screaming at you to stop vibrating at such a high level. They want to drag you back down to a low frequency, because it is the only environment where their cheap magic tricks actually work. They are melting down over your calm, because your calm highlights their absolute chaos. Number 10. You have become a walking, terrifying mirror to their deepest, most unspeakable, and unhealed insecurities. Let us look at the internal mechanics of your soul versus theirs. You have willingly walked into the dark night of your own soul. You have confronted your shadow, wept over your flaws, repented for your missteps, and actively engaged in the brutal work of self-correction. You know exactly who you are, the good and the terrifying. They have spent their entire lives running from their shadow. They project their own flaws onto everyone else, aggressively refusing to take accountability for their toxic traits, their failures, and their deep-seated feelings of worthlessness. The psychological phenomenon happening here is intense projective identification and mirror trauma. They do not actually hate you. They hate the reflection of themselves they see in your eyes. Because you are clear, pure, and spiritually aligned, your energy acts like a flawless, polished mirror. When they stand in front of you and hurl insults, manipulate, or try to dominate, They are confronted with the horrifying reality of their own ugliness. They thought they were attacking a victim, but they realized they were punching a mirror, and now their hands are bleeding. They are panicking because they cannot escape the reflection. Your success, your peace, and your boundaries are undeniable proof that they are the problem, not you. Imagine becoming a giant, inescapable, floor-to-ceiling mirror in a room full of psychological vampires who have spent centuries convincing each other that they are beautiful, angels of light. Suddenly you walk into the room and the gig is up. They look at you, look at the reflection, and see the monstrous, unhealed, parasitic truth of what they have become. They hiss, they cover their faces, they try to throw blankets over you, and they try to shatter the glass. But you are unshakable. You do not absorb their attacks. You simply reflect them back to their origin. This is why they are so frantic. They are trying to figure out how to destroy the mirror before anyone else in the room realizes what it shows. Number 11. They tragically, fundamentally mistook your chosen kindness for inherent blindness and your grace for weakness. You operate from a posture of high-level grace. When you forgive, when you overlook a slight, or when you give someone a second chance, you are doing it from a position of spiritual strength and conscious choice. You see the flaw, but you choose the higher road. Toxic, performative, insecure people do not understand the concept of chosen grace. In their worldview, if someone allows themselves to be disrespected without immediately seeking violent revenge, that person is simply weak, stupid, or blind. They view kindness not as a virtue to be respected, but as a vulnerability to be mercilessly exploited. The psychology of predatory entitlement dictates that they will continue to push, take, and drain until they meet an impenetrable wall. They assumed your boundaries were made of paper. They assumed they could keep stepping on your toes, insulting your intelligence, and manipulating your empathy forever. When you finally swung the heavy sword of your boundaries and severed their access to your life, the shockwave completely broke their reality. They are panicking because they miscalculated your character on an astronomical level. They never expected the nice person to possess the capacity for such cold, absolute, uncompromising detachment. They are frantically trying to figure out where this hidden strength came from. It is the ultimate metaphor of a foolish trespasser confusing a quietly sleeping lion for a domesticated house cat. For months, they poked the lion with a stick, laughed at it, stole its food, and bragged to their friends about how easily they controlled the beast. But the lion wasn't tame. It was simply resting. The moment you opened your eyes, stood up to your full height, and let out a single, earth-shaking roar of truth, all their arrogant bravery evaporated into thin air. They are now scrambling over the fences, tripping over their own feet, terrified of the beast they awakened. They are realizing, far too late, that your patience was not a symptom of your weakness. It was a symptom of your mercy, and unfortunately for them, your mercy just ran out. Number 12. The spiritual authority in the dynamic violently shifted, and they felt the atmospheric drop in their bones. You must recognize that the battles you are fighting are not merely psychological or social. They are profoundly spiritual. Your alignment with the Most High, your dedication to truth, and your refusal to harbor bitterness have granted you a massive increase in spiritual authority. Your aura has expanded. Your energetic footprint has grown heavy. They, on the other hand, operate on earthly manipulation, low vibrational witchcraft, gossip, and fear. They rely on dense, murky energy to obscure their actions. On a somatic, subconscious level, the human nervous system is acutely aware of energetic hierarchies. Even the most spiritually dead, narcissistic, ignorant people can sense when someone's spiritual authority has eclipsed theirs. They feel diminished in your presence. When you walk into a room or even when you simply cross their minds, they feel a heavy, undeniable pressure that they cannot logically explain. They are panicking because they used to feel like they towered over you energetically, but now they feel like ants standing in the shadow of a monolith. They do not know how to fight a spiritual war because they only have earthly weapons. They are trying to use gossip to defeat an anointing, which is entirely futile. It feels exactly like the sudden, eerie, suffocating drop in atmospheric pressure that occurs right before a massive, inescapable storm makes landfall. The birds stop singing, the wind dies down, and a primal sense of dread settles over the landscape. They are standing in the middle of their artificial, fragile little life, looking up at the sky as the dark clouds of your undeniable truth roll in. They know a storm is coming. They know they cannot manipulate the weather, they cannot gaslight the thunder, and they cannot lie to the lightning. Their frantic texts and desperate smear campaigns are just them running around nailing cheap plywood to their windows, hoping the storm of their own karma passes over them. But the shift has already happened. The spiritual high ground belongs to you. Number 13. Their reliance on emissaries is failing as their flying monkeys begin to defect and question the master narrative. You stand alone in your power. Your truth does not require a committee. It does not need a consensus, and it does not need an echo chamber to be valid. You are a standalone entity of alignment. The toxic leader, the narcissist, or the insecure clique absolutely cannot survive on their own. They require an army of enablers, apologists, and flying monkeys, people who do their dirty work, spread their rumors, and validate their distorted reality. They use these people to insulate themselves from accountability and to attack you by proxy. The psychological collapse happening right now is a masterclass in the sociology of crumbling alliances. A toxic leader's power is entirely dependent on keeping their enablers blind to the truth. However, your steadfast silence, your visible success, and your refusal to engage in the drama are creating massive cognitive dissonance within their ranks. The more perceptive enablers are starting to look at you, calm and thriving, and then looking back at the toxic leader, who is frantic, obsessive, and unhinged. The math is no longer adding up. The coalition is fracturing. People are starting to ask questions. If the chosen one is so crazy, why are they the only one minding their own business? The leader is panicking because they are losing their grip on the very people they use as weapons. It is the tragic, inevitable scene of rats abandoning a rapidly sinking ship, while the delusional performative captain stands at the wheel, screaming at the crew that the ship isn't sinking. It is merely transforming into a submarine. The water is rushing in, the hull is breached by the truth, and the captain is frantically trying to bucket out the ocean with a teacup. Their most loyal soldiers are quietly grabbing life vests and swimming away, refusing to go down with the lie. The cult of conformity is panicking because they are realizing that without their numbers, without their mob mentality, they are just weak, isolated, fearful individuals holding an empty script. You defeated an entire army simply by letting them destroy themselves. Number 14. They are completely obsessed with trying to predict a counter move you have absolutely no intention of making. Look at the total freedom of your unbothered existence. You are spontaneous, spirit-led, and entirely focused on your own healing, your own abundance, and your own path forward. You wake up every day and listen to your intuition. You have no grand strategy for revenge, because revenge requires looking backward, and you are only moving forward. Contrast this with their paranoid, calculated, obsessively monitored existence. To a control freak, predictability is oxygen. They need to know what you are doing, who you are talking to, and how you are going to react, so they can plan their next manipulation. The deep psychology of their current obsession is rooted in the terror of the unknown. Because you went silent, you became a blank canvas. They are projecting all of their own vindictive, petty, vengeful desires onto you, because they would seek revenge if they were in your shoes. They are absolutely convinced that you are masterminding a massive retaliation. They are studying your social media silences, analyzing your blocked accounts, interrogating mutual acquaintances, and trying to decode an attack that is literally never coming. They are exhausting themselves, shadowboxing with a phantom. Their frantic energy is entirely self-generated. They are trapped in a prison of their own paranoia, waiting for a bomb to drop that you never even built. It is like watching a team of frantic, sweating scientists trying to map the erratic, explosive, unpredictable path of a lightning strike, using nothing but a cheap plastic compass and a protractor. They are calculating angles, drawing charts on the wall, screaming at each other about probabilities, trying to contain the force of nature. But you are the lightning. You do not have a mapped-out path. You simply follow the path of highest truth and strike exactly where the energy commands. Your absolute lack of a manipulative plan is the exact thing that defeats their meticulous, exhausting schemes. They are exposing themselves, running in circles, trying to figure out how you found out, while you have already left the building and moved on to a higher dimension of living. When you zoom out and look at all of this, the frantic scrambling, the desperate whisper networks, the suffocating masks, and the absolute collapse of their fragile ecosystems, one undeniable truth becomes impossible to ignore. This was never really about you fighting them. This was about you radically outgrowing them. Their entire panic is a trauma response to your evolution. They are not targeting your physical actions. They are targeting your energetic alignment, your peace, and your unshakable truth, because those are the very things they cannot manufacture for themselves. You introduced reality into a room full of people addicted to illusions, and the ensuing chaos is entirely their responsibility to manage, not yours. You do not need to prove anything to these people. You do not need to perform. You do not need to defend your character, and you certainly do not need to seek revenge. Let them hold their emergency meetings. Let them exhaust themselves trying to maintain their heavy, suffocating masks. Let them shadowbox with the ghost of the person you used to be. Your only job right now is to keep stacking your bricks on solid ground. Keep listening to your profound intuition, and keep walking in the authentic, unapologetic light of your spiritual authority. Their panic is the loudest confirmation you will ever receive that you made the exact right choice by walking away. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment with what point hit you hardest, and share the video with someone who needs the reminder. Stay chosen. Stay blessed.